All right, it's a Tuesday morning edition of the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show here on October 21st, 2025. Good day, everyone. I'm your host, Chris Baker, here as always with your Sabres beat writer from The Athletic. That's Matthew Fairburn. You can find all of Matthew's work, including his game story from the Sabres 4-2 loss last night in Montreal at theathletic.com/Sabres. We're going to get right to it today, Matthew, and talk about the happenings last night in the Sabres 4-2 loss. But first, got to do some plugs. For those watching on YouTube, if you could please like this video, subscribe to the Sabres Prospects YouTube channel, hit the notification bell so you know when a new video drops or when Matthew and I go live. You can find the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And you could please leave a 5-star review. Matthew, Yeri Kulik and Tyson Kozak get on the board for Buffalo last night. Alex Lyon made his 6th consecutive start in the Sabres net, stopping 27 of 30 to take the loss. But yes, the Sabres slipped to 2-4 on the year. And my high-level thought on the game is that maybe there could have been a different result if the Sabres could just get a little harder on bodies in front of their own net when defending right in front of Alex Lyon. But the result is what it is, and I'm going to pass the puck to you for some high-level thoughts on the game.
I would say my high-level thought on this game as I was watching it is the Canadiens have really passed the Sabres by. Like, they're faster. They're, more assertive, more connected offensively. They're just a better team. I mean, Montreal looks like they're going to be a real threat in the Atlantic Division this year. And I would say I wasn't necessarily skeptical of them heading into the season, but all last season, they felt like they were performing above their talent level. Maybe not their talent level, but their overall, collective. It felt like they were outperforming the way they were actually playing. We've known they've had a lot of young talent, but the group they have now, they got really good goaltending last night, and they're just a really fast, tough team, getting inside ice, getting to the net. They are an interesting collection of players that I think is going to be, one of the real players here in the Atlantic Division. And it's weird to think that just a few years ago, the gap between the Sabres and the Canadiens was significant. In 2022-23, the Sabres had 91 points. Montreal had 68. Montreal had just picked number 1 overall. And now, not only did Montreal pass them last year and get to the playoffs, and you could say, oh, Montreal was pretty fortunate. They won a lot of close games, and the Sabres had a pretty ugly year. Well, now I just look and I think Montreal is just the better team. And to your point, there were some things the Sabres could have done last night, and the Sabres aren't 100%. We can throw in that caveat at the beginning of every episode, but it's like that's still just a team that plays fast, and the Sabres looked for a good chunk of the night like they couldn't keep up. At least early on, 11 high danger chances in the first period for the Montreal Canadiens. It was like the speed and the game plan from Montreal was just too much for Buffalo to handle. And I think it's worth pointing out based on what we talked about yesterday, right? The week coming up, games against Montreal, Detroit on Wednesday, who's off to a really strong start, and then Toronto, 2 games over the weekend. Where do you stand in the division? I think that's the big question. And after last night, you look and say, well, that's one team that really isn't in the big 3, right? The traditional big 3 in the Atlantic has been Florida, Tampa, Toronto, and Montreal wasn't even in there. So when you're thinking about how the playoff picture looks, maybe it's a little more crowded than you thought.
It's going to be very crowded. And I know it's early in the season, but that was an opportunity last night. The Sabres had games at hand on every team in the division going into last night's game. And now with the loss, they're deadlocked there at the bottom spot with Ottawa and Tampa. And again, very early.
Great losses to the Canadiens, by the way.
Yeah, they ran the table on them last year. The Habs did at some critical points in the season too. I think, that little 10-game mini season that we talked about, they had a game in there that was one of those losses. What I'm talking about was that 10 games leading up to Thanksgiving last year. We were chronicling that here on the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show, and I remember a game at home, I think on a Monday, I want to say, in which it was an afternoon game. Does this ring a bell? But I mean, that's the one that
Yeah, and
really
they let
stands
up.
out to me, and it's been that game was emblematic of, I think, the skating pace of the Canadians dominating the Sabres in the
They
past 2
lost that
years.
game 7-5.
Yep.
That was a Lukanen and Levi ended up playing in that game, but I remember, yeah, that was a leading into Thanksgiving.
Yep.
Sabres were on a 3-game winning streak, and Montreal upended them on a Monday, 7-5. Like, this Canadians team scored against the Sabres last year, and we knew they were fast. We knew they were exciting, but they looked complete last night and dangerous. Whether they can sustain that for a long season and get the goaltending all year, but I don't know if you were betting on one of these teams, to finish higher in the standings. Montreal is a pretty easy bet, I think, for a lot of people right now.
Yeah, they're looking good. +5 goal differential right now. They're scoring goals. They're defending well. They weren't full power last night either, with Gooley out. That's a big part of their defensive core. And I was looking at Struble out there last night. Good young player. I like him. Big, can move decently. But man, if they could have just thrown pucks in deep and put pressure on him, he was prone to making some mistakes last night, and they just couldn't consistently do that enough. But in terms of, kind of like a studs and duds type of approach to looking at the game last night at an individual basis, I think there were a couple players from the Sabres that came out and played a good game. And there were a couple that I think left us wanting more. And I just want to start with you. I think Yuri Kulik had a much better game last night than what we had seen from him in his previous 5. He's been steadily ramping up after that slow start. He was noticeable to me in all 3 zones of the ice, some good defensive plays. I understand that he was maybe one of those guys that wasn't going full body on body in front of the net. Well, Samuelson on the first goal that Montreal scored. But overall, I think he atoned for that early shortcoming. Do you agree on Kulik as one of the better players last night for the Sabres?
Is that the first goal or the second goal?
I think it was the first, but no, maybe it was this. It was the second. Yeah, I think it was the second goal. I have to go back and
Yeah, I
look,
was going to
but
point out that play because that was costly at a key point. It was Slafkovsky, right? Broke in and just sort of overwhelmed both Kulik and Samuelson. Or I would say overwhelmed, but I just didn't see much resistance, I guess, from either Samuelson or Kulik on that play.
yeah.
Outside of that, I agree with you. Kulik, it was like the first game that it looked like he was skating the way we've seen and attacking the net, the way we've seen shooting uh, off the rush, making some plays. They need that. They finally got him going a little bit, but he'll want that defensive play back. He's not gonna like looking at that one on video. And you know what? Samuelson, I thought, was playing a really strong game before that as well. But you have plays like that, and that's what's gonna stick with people. That's what'll, stick with you. Those mistakes end up, in the back of your net on a night when Alex Lyon was playing another terrific game for the Sabres. You kind of hang him out to dry a little bit on a play like that. So Kulik, positive development for sure, because they've needed to get him going. And, as we move, through the list of studs and duds, I think we'll see it's even how important it is that they have at least one center going right now.
Well, there was another center that I thought had a good game last night, but it's the opposite end of the lineup. But I think Tyson Kozak really is emerging as a guy that's showing his value to this team. He did it last year. He did it really from the get-go. When you look at his time in Rochester, it was a pretty slow cook, but he was, constantly making progress. It just wasn't this massive leaps and bounds. He was always working hard. He was always really detailed on the back check. His back checking rounds were good, sealing guys off on the back check, keeping plays in the zone. But really, the hallmark of his game has always been getting to the net, scoring goals right at the edge of the paint. Had another one last night. He won some key draws. The 6-on-5 at the end of the game, I texted you. I think they had McLeod taking draws. Tage was taking a couple draws, but I think it was McLeod mostly. I was like, just throw McLeod out there. Or I'm sorry, just throw Kozak out there. Have him win the draw and put him right in front of the net and force the play to the net. I thought Kozak had a good game last night. And, there were a couple other players, but he was one. But for a plug, I think for you, I'm pretty sure that you mentioned a pretty nice game as well for the Sabres.
Yeah, you froze up there for a second, but to tie the bow on your Kozak point, like I wrote about Kozak because he probably could have had a few goals even. Like, he was right at the net for a few different chances, and my takeaway watching him last night, especially with the nature of the Sabres roster right now, is that, like, this guy is starting to look like just an everydayer. Maybe not an everyday in the lineup, but a full-time NHL player. Because as you look at the shuffling of who goes up and who goes down, this is a guy that Lindy Ruff trusts for good reason. He's playing sound defensively. He is solid on the forecheck. He's a guy that they can count on when they're getting pucks in deep, when it's that type of game, that he's going to, be fine being the first guy in there, getting deep, winning battles. To your point, maybe they should sprinkle him in, to get other lines going. Like, he might be that type of player. I'm not saying bump him up the lineup. I'm saying
No,
in a game where,
situational booster. Yep.
yeah, in a game where guys aren't going, like, throw him on somebody's wing or whatever, like, because he's a smart player that's going to play hard. You can count on him to not make mistakes, and you can count on him to get some of that net front presence. I don't see anybody coming to take his job, right? The guys that are returning, Greenway, Malenstein will be back, before long. Obviously, when Norris gets back, that, bumps everybody down. But to me, Kozak is outperforming Peyton Krebs at the moment. And, we can get into, that third line if you want. We can get into McLeod. Like, there's a few guys
We will.
I would,
Yeah.
throw into that dud category as we work our way through here. But Kozak definitely belongs up there. I think as he gets more comfortable too, he might finish more of these chances. Like, he probably could have had a couple of goals last night, and he gets a goal, and Quinn gets a gift of an assist, because I don't think that was the play Quinn was trying to make. He was trying to shoot the puck and fanned on it, and Kozak finished it anyway. So at a point where it looked like the Sabres might be down and out, they had a fighting chance because Kozak made a play. And to my point, he made a play on a line with guys, his line mates last night were anchors, right? Like, his line mates were Mason Geertsen and Josh Dunn. And guys, not even if they weren't, playing poorly necessarily, guys that Lindy Ruff clearly did not trust. I think Dunn played 6 something and Geertsen played 5 something. So it's like, I don't know that that's a sustainable formula for your fourth line to have those guys out there, particularly in Geertsen's case, if he's not going to fight or, bring anything that really sparks the team. And as a side note there, if you got Tage Thompson doing what he's doing, jumping in as aggressively as he is after the whistle, maybe you don't need Geertsen. I mean, Thompson's a pretty big dude. Maybe he's not striking fear into other teams the way Geertsen is, but he can handle his own. You don't want him to, but the pack mentality is what you're looking for, and I'm still seeing some of that. So the Geertsen thing is, I don't want to say it's running its course, but they really need to, I think, pick their spots better, and they've been pretty depleted with injuries, and it seems like he's getting more games than he probably should.
No, I agree there. And, your point about Thompson being the aggressor, I thought at one point late in the game, he was going to rip Slafkovsky's head off his shoulders and his neck behind
Probably
the net.
should.
He was
Probably in
punching
hindsight, I was
Aline.
like, we were texting about it
Yeah.
because you were like,
Could have killed him.
debating whether he should have fought him, right? And I thought, they went to a commercial break, and I was like, hey, maybe they're getting a power play here, and it'd be good. And then they just got the matching rough, and it was like, yeah, I should have just dropped him. Like,
Yeah.
should have just gone after him, because obviously you don't want to lose Thompson on a power play. But if you're going to the box anyways, get your money's worth. And there'll be more games against the Canadians. I think, definitely pretty testy at points last night. And I think the Sabre, Darlene mentioned after the game that they felt like the Canadians had a really good plan coming in to, stop what Buffalo wanted to do, and they adjusted after the first period, and it was a different game from that point forward. So be curious to see what they carry into the next game, and whether they can turn the tide a little bit on the Canadians, because right now Montreal has their number in a big way.
They definitely do. We don't need to spend a lot of time on this one, but I think the ultimate stud, I saved the best for last year. We can do this every game, I think. Zach Benson played, he had a heavy workload last night, 21 minutes and 11 seconds. What I'm showing is time on ice for him. Team leading 7 shots on goal. It just seems that his teammates, his line mates can just dump the puck in, throw it into space, however you want to say it. And Benson's a guy that's going to go in there and win it and create something. And we saw that again last night. Yuri Kulik, after the game, took a bunch of questions from Paul Hamilton, and amongst them was one about, getting Kulik to speak. Kulik was just absolutely glowing about Benson's game after a 4-2 loss. But I think the impact that he has on his line mates, the impact that he has on Tage Thompson, we saw it late last year. We saw his advanced metrics at the end of the season last year as meaning to this group. It really showed through again last night, despite the final result in the 4-2 loss to Montreal.
It's a lot of what we've talked about Zach Benson from basically the minute he came into the league. He hasn't lost any of the tenacity, the willingness and ability on the forecheck, the responsibility and good decisions away from the puck. But now he's just that much stronger, that much quicker, that much faster. The only thing missing right now is the finish, right? I think he led the team in shots on goal with 7 last night. He still has not gotten his first goal of the season, but it is crazy how many chances they get when he's on the ice because of the plays he can make in small, tight areas, the way he wins puck battles. Whether or not the finish comes, right? Whether he is a guy that, starts scoring at a higher rate, he's already setting goals up at a much higher rate than he did in his first 2 seasons. 6 points in his first 3 games played. He leads the team in points, and he's played 3 games. So this is a guy that I think he helps the power play tremendously, and he is the one lifting that first line the way I see it anyways. The other one I'll throw into the stud category as we wrap it up, also probably kind of obvious, is Alex Lyon.
Yeah.
But this might have gotten ugly early, if not
Weathered
for
the
Alex
storm,
Lyon.
no doubt. Yep.
I mean, you think back to the game in Montreal last season, the answers are in the room game, as it'll be known. They were getting boat raced right out of the gate in that game because they couldn't get a save. And in this game, it could have been the same. It could have been 3-4-0 after the first period, but he made some big saves and calmed things down. And then all of a sudden it's a hockey game. And that's been every single game. I mean, that 0-3 start looked not that bad, right? They had like a 1-0 game for most of the time against the Rangers that turned into 4-0 with a few late goals. I think it was 3-1 against Boston, 3-1 against Colorado. But I think everybody in that room knows it could have looked even worse if it weren't for Lyon. And it's been every night that he's keeping these games close.
Listen, I think with Lyon, what's interesting, you saw the team's compete level increase. And I don't think it's just Lindy riding their asses in practice and whatever, pulling them aside one-on-one. I don't think it's exclusively that. I think also the confidence and having Lyon back there and the guys knowing that I think they have confidence in him. I was thinking about this last night when I was watching the game 2 seasons ago when UPL was on that run after New Year's and was like one of the best goalies in the league. Even then, I didn't have full confidence. You were always thinking that maybe the walls were going to crumble a little bit, and you were waiting for the regression from this high level of play that UPL was doing. I know it's only 6 games in, but there's this confidence that comes. And I think it's probably with the experience that, we have a track record of seeing Alex Lyon be a very good goaltender in the role that he's been in. But at the same time, I know there's a lot of people in the universe in the NHL right now that are saying, he can do it in short spurts. But I don't know if he's overextended. Like, he could be the guy
100%. He could be the
all
guy.
year, I think,
100%.
because
I think
and I'm noticing his impact on the team. I think there's part of that getting this team going was the confidence that they have in the goaltender.
I think if I were, putting my money on it right now, I think he will be the guy all year. I think it will be a 60-40, when UPL's healthy at the very least. I mean, he could cool off. He probably will cool off at some point, right? That happens. But I think part of what you're talking about with the impact he has on the team is what we talked about on Monday and what Alex Lyon talked about after the game on Saturday, the emotional energy that he likes to play with, I think has an impact on the team. This intense focus, the intensity that he plays with, the way he reads the game, there is a leadership coming from the goalie position right now. And it looks different than leadership at other positions, but it is much needed on a team that oftentimes throughout the course of games needs to calm down a little bit and needs to feel that confidence coming from the crease. It is not unlike what they got out of James Reimer. And I know late in the season, those games didn't mean as much and all those things. But when James Reimer was in there, he wasn't Dominic Hasek, but he was making the right reads. He was confident. He was steady. And the team kind of felt that predictable nature of his game. And I think it's a good point you make about Luukkonen. And it's not to rag on Luukkonen, but during that heater,
I'm a UPL guy. Yeah.
during that heater, you were sitting there wondering, like, when's the other shoe going to drop here? Right.
Yep.
And then last year, he never really found the rhythm. And so you didn't know what you were getting night to night. That's also just the product of the fact that he's is he 26 now? He was 25 last year, like 24
Matt, you
2
just
years
said it.
ago. Like the youth. It's like, he's still not experienced the way Lyon is. And Lyon, like I said, is not some guy with a long track record. He's not, going home at night and polishing his Vezina trophies, but he's 32 years old. Like he's been there, he's done that, and he has some experience to lean back on. And I think he's a real leader for this team right now.
The veteran poise that Alex Lyon brings, I don't think there's any question that he's making an impact on the group in front of him. And that's kind of why I started with my high level thought. If they were just tougher on bodies in front of him last night, it could have been a different result, I believe, because of the way that Alex Lyon is presently seeing the puck. He's really seeing the puck come in. But, I'm sure we'll keep an eye on Lyon because, there's a good chance he's going to play again on Wednesday, and maybe we'll have another opportunity to talk about him a little bit more. Okay. Before we get into the duds, let's do like a minute on Zach Metza. Didn't play a ton, made his NHL debut last night. I think he had his welcome to the NHL moment, and it wasn't an egregious error by any means, but the straight line speed coming at him on the way back when he had to kind of back check, I think that was his wake-up call. And it might have been also Lindy's wake-up call to say, okay, I got to maybe tune down my expectations. It's not going to be a regular shift night for Zach Metza, nor should it have been. But overall, I thought he looked okay. Like, I think he was pretty crisp with the puck. And he was confident. He moved okay, given I think that he's going to have some limitations, but 9:02 time on ice last night, played just 12 shifts, had a block shot, had a penalty, right? He found himself in the box, I believe, early in the game there. Just quick thoughts on Metza before we get to some duds, because I think we got to break down some of these duds.
I think the strength of his game is definitely handling the puck. And to your point, the skating, like the quickness and the speed, some of it won't catch up, right? He's 27 years old. So like as far as his skating goes, he's pretty much where he's going to be. But I do think the the quickness of the game. They won't play Montreal every night, right? And Montreal probably isn't the best matchup for Metza, but also you can play quicker than your speed, once you get used to everything. And I think, like we said, this is probably not necessarily a guy that has way more runway ahead of him as far as what he's going to become, but showed last night that in spot duty, he can be all right, especially your first game in that environment. There's reason to think he could play an even calmer game, but the quick decisions with the puck. Look, puck management, and we'll get into it when we rip through some of these duds. Puck management last night was sloppy for the Sabres. And so to have a guy, they were not breaking the puck out well, to have a guy that was making some clean passes and, good reads, that alone was a nice baseline to have, even though, like you said, he had a few hairy moments.
All right, let's talk about some duds. And I think for me, let me just kind of tee one up because we talked about, where Noah Ostlund might fit in this lineup. If Lindy Ruff elected to put him in last night, which he did not. Ostlund was a scratch last night, along with Zach Jones. And there was one other, Bryson, they had as a scratch, even though, he's still recovering from being in concussion protocol. But with Ostlund waiting in the wings, I think let's talk about the unit as a whole. I think the Krebs line with Quinn and Zucker just was not clicking, certainly for a second straight game. But I didn't really feel some cohesiveness there with that unit. And I think we should probably just talk about them real quick. If you want to single out one player, you can. But I think that line as a whole, I think that line as a whole was just not inspiring.
You could go through the whole group. Through 2 periods, they had a 6.85% on ice expected goal share at 5-on-5. Just a brutal number. They were getting caved in all night. You could notice it when you were watching the game. It's like, man, Montreal has been hemmed in for a bit. Oh, yep, that line's out there again. Zucker, not his best night. That third goal, I know people are going to put some of that on Owen Power for setting him up, passing him that puck in the corner, and then he turns it over. But Zucker wasn't really strong on the puck all night. Maybe Power shouldn't have gone there, but Zucker wasn't super strong on the puck all night. So that stood out. Quinn got the assist, but before that, also just not strong enough on the puck, like losing battles and, turning the puck over because he's losing battles. Krebs out of his depth on that line, as far as I'm concerned. It's not necessarily anything he did. He's just not. It's like we talked about a little bit yesterday. You see him higher up in the lineup at times, and it's just like, I think this experiment, it's just not who he is. You're waiting for him to become that, maybe like, oh, Krebs is up on the top line left wing. Like, this is a first round pick. He's got that talent. Like, maybe this will be the time it clicks. And I just think he is what he is, and I think he's good at what he is as a fourth line center, but I don't think
me too.
Higher up in the lineup, it just hasn't worked for him yet. And last night was kind of another example. 2 skill guys around him, 2 skill guys that weren't playing well. So I'm not, putting that on Krebs, but it's not like he lifted the line either. He wasn't all that good. And Quinn, what do you do with Quinn at this point? I mean, he had the assist, but he fanned on the shot. Kozak made the play happen. Quinn has, if natural stat tricks counting are right here, let's go to all strengths and double check this number that natural stat trick has. Jack Quinn has 0 hits, according to natural stat trick. So, not that that's his game, but he's also not doing a ton in the other areas. I know he had a couple of goals on point night against Ottawa, but just not doing a lot on that line. And there's no depth right now on this team when you don't have a third line contributing.
Well, that's just it. Even though it was a fast game last night, they missed a Greenway and they missed a Danforth last night. And I know they're not the fastest guys in the world, but they were missed last night. The lack of depth certainly came into play throughout the game at 5-on-5, came into play at the end of the game, in my opinion. I think they got saved, the Sabres did, by the Habs taking a timeout. so they could rest their guys if they wanted to roll out there again, because those guys looked a little tired. But yeah, Krebs, I appreciate what he is. I appreciate his energy, but the mustache has not led to magic, and the stick this year for him. And when things can get reset, I think there's going to be questions with two of those guys for sure. Quinn, I think, to be determined. I think he finished the game well last night, maybe the last 10 minutes. Better. I shouldn't say well, better than he was in like the first 45, 50 minutes. And you got to have more from him, because when you go back to the season preview, you're like, where are the goals going to come with Peterka? You were looking at being gone, right? You were looking at Kulik, you're looking at Quinn, you're looking at these guys taking the next step, and Quinn's leaving a lot to be desired right now. So we'll leave it at that. And yeah, he's on watch. He's on watch. As if this team gets healthy, I could see Lindy maybe sending a message to Quinn.
Well, we
and it wouldn't
talked
be the
about
first time.
when we
Yeah.
were sketching out lines in the summer with a fully healthy group. It's like,
Didn't know where the hell
this
he
guy
fit.
this guy might not have a spot. And, there's been enough injuries that hasn't even been a question at this point. But now, even with the injuries, I think it's a question for Wednesday. If you're looking to send a message, uninspiring start after a lot of tire pumping from the front office and the coaching staff in preseason about all
An
the work that he
extension.
put in. I mean, the extension alone, and a lot of tire pumping in September about the work he put in the summer and all this
Yeah, the
weight he was
deadlifts.
deadlifting. The deadlift,
Yeah.
Deadlifts have made him dead weight right now. I mean, he's not doing a whole lot out there, and maybe it'll come. He had, like I said, he had the couple of goals. You thought maybe that would get some confidence going, but on that note, another guy who had a couple of goals on point night, who to me falls into this dud category, is Ryan McLeod.
Yeah. You had mentioned sloppy puck touches, and he's the one that jumps out, I think, in terms of
I feel like I texted you like 4 times during the game, like, there's another one from McLeod. I have like running notes during the games, and in the file I write my story, and it's like there was like 4 or 5 lines where it was like bad decision by McLeod, bad puck touch by McLeod, and he had one late in the game. I think it was either in the 4-on-4 or with the extra attacker, where it was like he put the puck to no one. He had a play in front of the net where he should have shot, and he tried to pass. He had turnovers. He had a careless pass in the neutral zone, cross ice backhand, led to a chance the other way. It's just like, part of me wants to give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, because he's probably playing higher in the lineup than he should. But at the same time, part of his value was supposed to be, again, with the big contract, right? $5 million a year. Part of the value is supposed to be that if you need him to for a little while, he can play up. And outside of that game where he had a couple of goals, like, he's been a problem. And he's bringing down some other guys, I feel like. I feel like Tuck's play is suffering because of, because he spent a lot of time with McLeod as his center. And, we'll get into Tuck too. We can put a pin in that. But McLeod, he's been a disappointment through 6 games. He's supposed to be, high IQ, good decisions with the puck, and good play speed. And I'm not seeing a whole lot of any of that right now. We know that he's not a physical player, so I'm not gonna, harp on that too much. But disappointing management of the game at the center position from him, and leaving a lot of meat on the bone at both ends of the ice. And it's really highlighting how this center depth chart is a problem right now.
He did have 2 takeaways last night. He also had 3 giveaways. He was better at the dot last night, winning just shy of 50%. But overall this year, he's just over 40% on faceoffs. So it's not just last night, to your point. He had 1 game really that he stood out. There was a moment in the game, you mentioned the 4-on-4. There was a sequence there. Timmins had the puck high in the box, passed up on a shot. And then later on in that sequence, McLeod gets the puck high in the right side of the zone, and that's where he needs to use his speed. Earlier in the game, we saw Yuri Cooley come in, again, entering the zone with speed, but galloped, lowered his shoulder, got a backhand off that led to that melee, right? But that was an opportunity for McLeod to go to the net, take the puck and go. Use your feet, use your wheels. Didn't do it. That's one play that stands out, but there were a couple, trying to get out of his zone on the left side of the boards at some point in the game, just a really sloppy touch, led to a turnover. Montreal sustains pressure. There was a lot of that where you just want more crispness from him. You want him to use his skating more. And to your point about maybe he's playing too high in the lineup, maybe, but we saw him do it last year. Maybe it was late in the season when things didn't matter. I don't know. But that versatility to move up and down, we're not seeing it right now. And I
That's
do
what the money's
believe
for.
that
That's what you're
that's
paying
what the
him
money's
for.
for. Well, was it a contract year? Again, I hate to say, I never believed in that whole contract year stuff ever. I just never believed in it. I was like, no, they're players, they're playing, they want to compete. I'm starting to feel with some of these guys it's true. And now I know why. People in the media and fans have always had that contract year tag that they put on guys because maybe it is a real thing. But look, I want to slow down on that part of the discussion.
It's
I'm
6
not
games.
saying that
You can get
it's 6
going. This
games,
could be.
okay?
He mentioned after the game that he scored a couple goals, that his legs have felt heavy. Did he come in? I don't know. Like, why do his legs feel heavy?
Yeah.
Did he go too hard in camp? Did he not come in the exact right shape he should have? I don't know. But he did mention that, like, legs have felt a little heavy, whatever it may be. Not giving him a pass, but yeah,
No,
we'll
but
we'll
those
see
things
how
are
it plays
connected,
out.
Matt. If it was a contract year and he got paid, did he take even a week off and enjoy his life and have some fun when he should have been training? Maybe because a week could set you back. 2 weeks could maybe, right? That's all I'm saying. I don't want to go there. I'm just wondering, where is that energy and effort that we saw last year? I want to see it a little bit more. So we'll see. He's another guy on watch, because he is impacting, in my opinion, Tuck. And I think that we should probably talk about Tuck, unless you had a couple more duds
I think we
that
should
you
talk
want to
about
throw up.
Tuck, because I think we could talk about, as a whole, the Sabres' best players are not making a difference in games. Dahlin had 4 giveaways last night, and the Canadians had 11 high danger chances, I think, when he was on the ice. He was actively involved in the game, but it was high event when Dahlin was out there. Whatever he was creating on one end, he was finding a way to give up on the other. Thompson was involved a lot, but again, not finishing, right? He's not, putting up, it seems like it's close. Like, we see this with Thompson sometimes early in the year where it's like he's around it, he's sniffing it, and he can break the dam at some point. But you can throw Tuck into this group as well, as far as guys. They're big guys. When we talk about these injuries, talk about the depth, talk about where the lineup's being stress test. Like, it would help if the best guys were carrying the mail, and they're not. And Tuck, I think, is an interesting one to get into, because you're right. The center play next to him is impacting the quality of chances he's getting, or even just the game flow that he's getting. But the number that stood out to me when I was writing last night, he has 1 hit in 6 games. And not that he is, the guy that is leading the way in hits all the time, but 1 hit stands out, because the way he plays, you would think he would have a few more than that. By comparison, and this is something I'll give Tage Thompson credit for, in addition to jumping in to defend Dahlin in back-to-back games, he has 17 hits.
He's leading the team with
He's leading
17
the team.
hits.
He has embraced, and yeah, like, Thompson kind of runs hot and cold sometimes, right? But, like, as far as getting in and battling, I'm seeing that more from Thompson. I'm seeing a guy that maybe wants to show he's got a little bit of that to his game, wants to show Billy Guerin, like, look,
I was going to say, wants to be an
I can
Olympian.
do this, right?
Yeah.
Tuck having 1 hit, you asked, I think it was whenever what we recorded after the first 3 games or whatever it was, like, is the contract impacting him? And that's the natural place to take this discussion in
Yep.
general, is the contract. And, he and I spoke middle of last week about that and about blocking it out. And he says a lot of the right things, and I do believe that there is a big part of Alex Tuck that is somewhat at peace with how the whole thing will, however it will play out. He's keeping his cards real close to the vest, and he is. I don't really have an indication one way or the other as far as like where his head is at with all of it. I think he seems confident and okay with however things turn out. Maybe that's something that he's projecting externally, and internally it's impacting him more. But when you see a guy with one hit, you do wonder, for a guy with injury history and a guy that is looking at a career defining payday, whether it's here or somewhere else, is there somewhat of, you know, is it entering the back of his mind or his subconscious at all? And this is we'll get back to Tuck, but kind of a side point is that like Matthias Samuelsson, because I think maybe what hurt him the last couple of years is like trying to protect himself too much. And it seems like he just doesn't care this year so far, which is a good sign. I bring that up to say like this type of thing can, I think, enter into your subconscious a little bit, whether you're just trying to stay healthy, whatever it may be. Maybe that has nothing to do with it, but one hit, I think they need more from Tuck, especially a guy that's killing penalties. He's out on the ice in these
The amount of
6-on-5
ice time he
situations.
gets,
He's on the ice constantly. So it's like to have one hit is pretty jarring. And the contract is going to be a talking point throughout the season. It's already been, this weekend it was a major talking point because his agent went on daily face-off or daily face-off rundown, whatever.
that or fourth period was it? Or
Yeah,
oh no,
it's like in
it was one of those. Yeah.
combination with it was Pagnota from the fourth period was one of the hosts on that show, and he said that talks are on the back burner, but that's just while the team, gets things figured out. It doesn't mean, doesn't mean anything, doesn't mean they've closed the book or anything. It's just not actively engaged with it while the team was 0-3 and trying to figure things out. Then there was Pagnota also over the weekend talking to teams that this thing could push $12 million a year, and seems outrageous to
In
me.
what universe? Yeah.
Not when he's playing like this, not when he has one hit in 6 games. And I mean, even look, he's never had 80 points, right? I mean, he's been like a 70-ish point player. Not getting 12 million a year, I don't think. If he does, then
No.
the economics of the NHL are it's not to say that I would just say if that happens, then teams are really using up that cap space, right? And you have to change how you're thinking about contracts. That would be probably, I mean, that would be a pretty crazy number for Tuck. And if it does, I can't imagine it would happen in Buffalo. Like, I don't know that $12 million a year is something that on their cap sheet they can be extending. So I don't know. That's a lot on Tuck, but where are you at with him at this point, contract and play wise?
I don't think that he's been awful, but I think everyone that knows the Sabres team, that's seen Tuck play over the past couple of years and is watching him play this year, knows that there's more that he can be doing right now, I think, for the team. And you're trying to figure out why. And I think it's a combination of everything. I do think that the whole specter, this contract thing is there in the back of his mind. But I do think on the ice, there's just not a clicking or a gelling through the first 6 games with McLeod. I think there's a little bit of that. Um, I don't know if off the ice, his duties as with another newborn kid at home is playing into how he prepares for his games and things like that. I'm just spitballing out there as possible factors. I'm not saying this is why. Whatever the case is, need him to step up, raise his level a little bit more, do more on his own. I do think though that, toying with a different centerman might not be a bad idea if they come out on Wednesday and Lindy keeps this line together and they just can't get the juice going. And again, that brings me back to Noah Ostlund, but I don't want to go there right now. I want to finish up on Tuck. I think Tuck's number is, probably 10.5 ceiling. That's where I'm at. I'm seeing a lot of crazy rumors, by the way, just crazy stuff in the rumor mill, on names that could be possibly available, and Tuck does come up as well. seems like there's these Western Conference teams at every, not every pundit, but a lot of them seem to think, oh, whether it's Edmonton or Vancouver, or I think LA would be a perfect spot with Kopitar leaving next year. Like, but anyways, I digress. But I
Well,
would say that, yeah.
this is where the Tuck conversation will start to go league wide. This is why when we talked before this in training camp and in the summer, it was like, if you don't get this done before the season, it's
It's
going
a
to hang over the
distraction.
group. It
Yeah.
becomes a distraction. Look, Tuck is going to handle it the right way. He's a pro. He's a good guy and a really, solid leader. But it's human nature for it to distract him a little bit, and it's human nature for it to hang over the team. Tage Thompson said it would be good for morale to get him under contract before the season started. It's not
Yep.
to say it's bad for morale to not have him under contract, but it's a missed chance at some good morale to get him under contract and to know that one of the guys that's wearing a letter, one of the guys that everybody in the fan base loves, one of your better players and your leaders is here to stay, is under contract. I think about at much lesser scale, but Kyle Okposo a couple years ago, started getting wandering eyes in like November about, where he was going to go at the deadline, in the final year of his contract, final year of his career. Guy was your
Yeah.
captain. Tuck's not at that point, but it's natural. We know the way the rumor cycle goes in the NHL is let's look at the UFAs. Let's see a team. You're looking at Buffalo. They're down in the standings. They're, maybe approaching the end of a regime. They're approaching, a turning point in this build. And you've got a guy that's a UFA that they haven't been able to sign. So yes, his name will pop up, when the dot connectors are doing what they do, trying to figure things out. And depending on which way the season goes, that's a conversation that look, can you afford, how are you going to play it? I guess, is it going to be what's worth watching for the Sabres? If you're Kevin Adams or, the collection of the brain trust in the front office making decisions, how are you going to approach this? Are you going to take it right up to July 1 if he's not signed, or are you going to have to pull the plug at some point if you feel like
Yeah.
the gap is too big and, look to see what you can get? Can you afford to let this guy walk for nothing? You have to be able to read the room and figure out, is this something, both sides are saying they want to get something done, but if the gap is too big, that starts to become a real conversation. And as we've said, this is going to be an evergreen type of thing until he's signed, something we can return to and talk about kind of again and again. But as we sit here on October 21st and he's not signed, it's kind of the elephant in the room a little bit as far as the present and future of this team goes. And he definitely needs to get going. I mean, if he wants $12 million a year, he definitely needs to get going a little bit. But I think 12 million, I don't know really where that number came from. Unless
Buffalo
somebody,
tax. Buffalo tax is
the
not that
Buffalo
much, though.
tax,
The Buffalo tax is
it's
what,
not.
5%, 8%, if that. I mean, that's a lot. What's the
I
Buffalo
think
tax?
Kempe and Natchez would have to really break the bank and set the market in a different place for 12 million to even be remotely in the conversation for Tuck. So something to watch, but I haven't gotten the impression that that's what he's after, at all. So I'll just say that, like, I don't think that number is realistic at this point. But hey, like I said, 1 or 2 contracts. Again, the other risk of waiting is that Natchez, Kempe, whoever signs and the bar goes up. I mean, Kaprizov signed for 17 million. Eichel is a different,
Jesus.
caliber of player, but like Kyle Connor, these contracts come in and you start to slot Tuck just a little bit below that if you're his agents trying to figure out the market. So if he had gotten it done in August, the market would have been different. The market conditions, he might have taken something different, but now, it's changed and the pressure ramps up. The leverage is still on Tuck's side and probably will remain on Tuck's side throughout. So be a fun subplot. I mean, fun for us to talk about, but like we mentioned, probably not fun for the locker room to wonder what's going on.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's saying that Tuck's, not playing. I don't think he's playing poorly by any means. He's just not playing to his level. He is behind his point pace, though. But I think the biggest thing when you look at Tuck right now, again, it's early in the season, 6 games in. His past 3 seasons, so last year, 18.4 shooting percentage, 11.5 the year before that, 16.5 the year before that. Right now, through 6 games, 5.9%. So the shots maybe will start going in. But again, does he get better shot opportunities when he has a different centerman? Something to think about.
Yeah, like we said with Noah Ostlund, if you're going to put him with some skilled players. And, you know, he would have been a nice addition to that third line. But part of me wonders if he's a nice addition to look, having Kulik and Ostlund as your number 1 and number 2 centers, was probably more on the 2027, 2028 bingo card.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That allows you to put McLeod into that third line role and maybe get that line going, or maybe get McLeod going. And I don't know, like the playmaking of Ostlund, just want to see him with some skilled players. And the way Zucker and Quinn are playing right now, I don't know if that's, would Ostlund help? Probably, but I don't know if that's the best environment either, right? At 2 guys that aren't really going. Maybe it gets them going, but it could fit. But it's
a step up from where Ostlund was placed in the lineup when he had his cup of coffee last year.
That's for sure.
It was mostly on the 4th line. If you move him from the 4th to the 3rd, maybe that makes sense. My point on Tuck is just that it's not even necessarily about the centerman. I think just going through the shooting percentages is that more goals are bound to go in for him. And for the Sabres' sake, hopefully it starts on Wednesday when they play the Detroit Red Wings in a big game, another big game. They're all going to be big games. Every game is a big game for the Buffalo Sabres when you haven't made the playoffs in 14 years.
When you start 0-3.
But they need to get Tuck going. Yeah, they need to get Tuck going. Matthew, we're over 50 minutes in. It's past 7:00 in the morning. I'm ready to go get some breakfast because I didn't fuel up before this podcast. I'm going to ask you kindly to do your plugs before I take us out of here.
Yeah, you can go to theathletic.com/Sabres and find everything I write there. We are inching closer to that 2,000 subscriber mark. We got, some people are spreading the good word. So as you're settling into your cubicle, after you get to the office, tell your office mates to subscribe to the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show on YouTube. Let's get to 2,000 before the end of the week. Comment on the video, like the video. Those things always keep the algorithm happy. They keep Chris happy. Those are all good things. We appreciate everyone's kind words about the show, and everybody seems to be liking these early mornings, getting them in the feed for people for their morning drive. So, yeah, all that good stuff. And we'll be back, I'm sure, before the end of the week.
You know what I just realized? I forgot to record this. I'm just kidding. After yesterday, could you imagine? Holy shit. All right. For Matthew Fairburn, you can find all of Matthew's work at theathletic.com/Sabres. There's always a deal that you can get for subscribing. Go there and find it. For the production crew that I hope is already down in the kitchen cracking some eggs, baby. I'm Chris Baker. We'll see you again next time.